Hey folks, welcome back to another Dice Tower preview. I'm Mark, and today we're taking a look at Weirdwood Manor, which is brought to you by Grey Ridge Games. It's for 1 to 5 players, ages 14 and up, and games generally run about 90 to 120 minutes. For centuries, Weirdwood Manor has stood at the nexus of the magical Fae realm and our real world, a place of magic, mystery, and wonder. It is ruled over by the enigmatic Lady Weirdwood and her stalwart wardens who work tirelessly overseeing the balance between both worlds and keeping evil in check. Until one fateful day, evil arises from the Fae like never before and breaches the manor. You and your valiant warden companions are called upon by Lady Weirdwood in order to help defend the manor from the invading Fae Monsters and their Clockwork Scarab minions. Weirdwood Manor is based on the interactive app game and book series. But to win the game, you, the players, must reduce the Fae Monster's health to 0 before any of the losing conditions occur, which varies depending on the monsters you face. But universally, you will lose if time runs out. If the day ring moves from day 12 back to day 1, you have not saved the manor in time and you all lose together. Do you have what it takes to enter the manor and survive? Join me and let's find out. So let's talk about time. You have 2 wheels that rotate around on the main board, and you have the time of day wheel, which is the inner wheel. So that goes from morning to night, and once you progress back to morning, then you'll increment the day wheel, and you only have 12 days to save the manor. That is the primary way that you can lose the game, is if you run out of time. So that is key. And now how does the time wheel move? Well, you have action cards. You'll be playing these action cards above your player board, and based on the slot that you put it in will determine where the time of day wheel moves. You could place it in the morning, you could place it in the night and move that wheel a bunch. It might be advantageous to do so for various reasons throughout the game. But that is what the players are doing when they play their action card. However, when the monsters come into play, the monster cards will also rotate this wheel, causing you to lose more time as they activate and do their actions. So it really comes down to, how do I deal with the time most efficiently in order to stop the monsters and save the manor? So the bottom line with time is the fact that your actions require time. So you'll always be moving forward and you're playing those cards. However, there are actions out on the main board that move time forward, but also can reverse time. So the other ways that you could potentially lose the game are going to be solely based on which monster you put into play. There's 3 different monsters. You have the Chaos Ogre, you have the Min Wraith, and you have the Dark Mage. Now, the Chaos Ogre, he's going to have Blight, and you have to squash this Blight, or he could potentially just destroy Lady Weirdwood. And she is key for a lot of these things as well. The Min Wraith can actually suck her life away, which again would cause you to lose the game. And then the Dark Mage can corrupt her, basically turning her to his side, I would say. She's become corrupted and you will lose the game that way. So really a lot of what happens with the monsters is going to be centered around her and how they deal with her and attack her and go after her. So there are several fun, interesting characters to choose from in this game, and one of the nice things is that on the back of all your player boards, you'll see a lot of information about the characters, dictating, well, not really dictating, but telling you more about them, and particularly what might intrigue you about playing this character and how this character works. So it's key to kind of look at these and see what makes sense for your play style, but you will be evolving these characters because you do have experience tracks at the bottom of the board where you'll have power, battle, and tactics. You'll get bonuses for moving up these different experience tracks, and you've got your health obviously starting at 3. And this is really dictating how many cards you're going to have in hand when you have your action cards available. Speaking of which, all your characters have their own set of action cards. So also you've got your battle dice track. You're going to start with the blue, more of that common or standard die. The thing with the blue is that it's got limited attack, but it also has some defensive capability. But the red dice is a full-on just attack, offensive, go after the monster, and those dice are super powerful for that. But the black dice are going to be used for defensive. So as you add more dice and power up your track here, you're going to have that handful of dice to use and attack with. Also, your character has its own special ability, and when you roll dice, you'll see a little explosive icon on the blue dice, which shows what you can activate your special abilities. You also have some other abilities on the other side of your board, which can be activated and used through the course of the game. But your main actions are going to come from your cards. Much like the player boards, the monsters have their own set of boards as well. And the neat thing here is that all the monsters really work very, very differently. However, the common aspect here is that as time goes on, the monsters get more and more powerful. So they go from calm to angry to enraged. And that is definitely a key aspect to keep an eye on as you're moving and playing through the rooms, and basically gearing yourself up is what you're really doing. You're getting ready for the big battle. So there are several different types of resources, and as you move through the manor, do various things, you're going to have these resources in order to spend to perform various actions or even activate the special abilities on your player board. So we've got power tokens, we've got min tokens, which are really like mana tokens, you've got knowledge tokens, and a lot of these can be gained by going out to the main board or moving up your different experience tracks, things like that. But you also have scarabs. Scarabs are a menace, and they will act like this ongoing expanding menace, so you have to deal with them as well as everything else going on in the manor. So you can't let them overrun you. But the thing is that once you defeat a scarab, you can take it back. One of the many things you can do with scarabs, you can take it back to your player board and have it as a resource to spend later. Because as you level up your dice, things like that, you'll need to have the scarabs in order to do some of that. So it just depends on what you're doing and how you're performing the actions and what types of resources you need. But you are, again, trying to build up your character and get ready for the final showdown. So gameplay here is very straightforward. We're not going to dive into all the actions because there's tons of possibilities as you play cards and as you activate rooms. But they do have a nice reference guide to lead you through all the different icons, so it does become very intuitive after a time. But especially about a lot of what you're doing out in the rooms are like maybe gathering resources. So you might discard a card to get 3 min, or you might come to a room where you can forge a dice. The cost for dice is on your player board and so forth as you move up this track. So all those things, and what's neat about the resources in general is that you know when you need to spend versus when you gain. When you gain resources, it'll be the color of the resource. When you need to spend a resource, it'll be in red, the same shape obviously, but it'll be in red, showing you when you need to spend it for specific things, for an action card or for like getting dice. So on your turn, you will be required to play one action card in one of the time slots. Now the reason you might pick a time slot over another is that these cards do start to create a synergy. If icons line up on the left and the right, like a shield or a sword, you can get a permanent block or a permanent hit when you're dealing with monsters and so forth. So that's a reason you might use cards in strategic ways in the different time slots, but again, you gotta be mindful about advancing time too quickly. So you will place a card there. Let's say it's movement. Now movement is something you're going to be doing a lot, obviously, and what you might think is that you see a movement of 2, it's not 2 spaces, but instead it's 2 destinations really. But you have to make sure that you have a path. The time wheels, when they move, they can start to open up corridors to rooms or even block rooms. So those are all things you have to keep in mind when you're moving around the manor and doing the various actions. So when you arrive at a room, as long as there's not a scarab there, if there is a scarab, you have to deal with the scarab first. Their health is only 1, so it's pretty easy to deal with them. However, if they roll their blue dice and they get the explosive icon, they scurry away. But you want to try to collect them as a resource. Is one of the things you can do with them. And battles in this game are just simply dice roll-offs. Regardless if you're fighting one of the scarabs or the main monster, you take the amount of dice that you've earned or you've forged, you're gonna roll it against their dice. And again, remember the monster ramps up the more time that goes on. But those scarabs, again, only have 1 health, so it's a pretty easy battle. But the interesting thing here is that all those different rooms give you another action to perform. Like I said, so many different things here. Gathering resources, forging dice is key. You need to build up your offense and defense. The blue dice, again, are balanced. You've got red dice, which are offense, which I went heavy in on, absolutely. And then the black dice are defense. So you're gonna pay the cost on your player boards when you go to those rooms, but building up your dice pool is definitely a key thing. you might get various cards like the Warden Tactic cards, which you can be played on your cards in your slots above your player board to give you more abilities. There's even companion cards that can be acquired to give you even more options for your character. Companions are fantastic, so do not neglect those when you can get them. There's also ways to increase your health, so you can either helpfully heal up or get higher level health so you have more cards in hand to work with. So you really need to be mindful about which rooms you're moving to, and talk with your fellow players about how you strategically place yourself to help them out as well. Other options available too is that your action cards can be played face down, kind of like a wild. You can use them to get a resource, can move, or just battle in a room or wherever you're at. Also, you can pay the cost and you activate one of your main special abilities on the right side of your player board. So you have lots of things you can do on your turn for sure. Now, also, after you finish your turn, then it's time for the monsters to go. You're going to draw the top card. What's interesting about the top card for the monster is that there's various icons here to kind of give you a glimpse of what they're going to be doing. So they might be moving or whatever, but that icon will give you that info. And also below the icon will show you how much time is going to advance for whatever they're going to be doing. And then you flip the card and take those actions that it calls for. And again, all these monsters are going to work very, very differently. And then after the monster activates, you will check to see if all your time slots have been filled with action cards. If they have, then those will be gathered and put into a discard pile, but it's time for the scarabs to activate. They're gonna migrate. They're gonna start to move from the rooms and start to move out across the manor. And the bad thing about having multiple scarabs in a room is that this starts to put a blight and the room will flip over and it really won't be active or available for you to use until you deal with these scarabs. But you will also be rolling to add more scarabs, so they really start to overrun the manor. So that scarab action, you got to keep these guys under control. So actually heading them off and reducing their numbers to start with might be a good first strategy. And when a room is blighted, you'll see that it has a required cost that you'll have to pay in order to turn it back to its rightful side, but you will gain experience by dealing with the blighted room. So, it's not all bad when rooms become overrun, but you do want to keep these scarabs in check. So just a little bit more about the monsters. They all really do work and feel very different as you deal with them. So their boards have different kinds of tracks on them. You have different aspects of them. Their card decks work very differently. And some, like the Minwraith, have dice that they can use. So you'll have to keep all that in mind when you're dealing and fighting with these monsters. But some of the cards might just simply move the monster around the board. Some of the cards might spawn more of the scarabs or even control them and do various things. And for the Minwraith, he's trying to drain Lady Weirdwood's health, so Lady Weirdwood has a track on the Minwraith's board showing you where her current health is and so forth. So obviously you want to reduce the monsters to 0 health so you win the game, and collectively you really do need to work together. You have to manage the monsters, you got to manage the different scarabs, keep them under control, and really save Lady Weirdwood from succumbing to anything the monsters are throwing at her. So again, you have to build up your characters in order to do this as well. Balancing, it's a balancing act all the way around. But in the end, you defeat the monsters, you win, or the monsters have multiple ways to defeat you. In time, or taking out Lady Weirdwood, or corrupting her, things like that. Alright folks, just a reminder once again, this has been a Dice Tower paid preview, and everything you've seen here has been in prototype form, so keep a close eye on the campaign for any changes that still may occur. Now with that said, I love that this game has some rich history behind it. That interactive app and the books, oh my gosh, they sent me a couple books. It really drew me into the story even more in playing this game, and I really like this time aspect, how this board works, how the wheels turn for the different times of day, and then the days themselves. It does become this pressure cooker as time evolves and the monsters become more powerful. So you really need to hurry, gather resources, and build up your character so you can quickly take out the monster and also deal with the scarabs at the same time. I love this pressure the game gives, and a lot of interesting choices to be made as you enter rooms, and how you need to pay attention to time about when the best time to enter rooms and so forth as the clock ticks ever further towards your demise. But folks, ultimately, if this looks like something of interest to you, I'm sure they'd appreciate your support. So I think that's it for me, and until next time, we'll see you at the table.